Well, good morning. Gosh, we have a little bit of snow here in New York City. So I guess we're not going to break that record like we might have been, but a little bit of a dusting. Well, thanks for joining in today. Whether you're joining me on LinkedIn Live or over my SelfRecruiter YouTube channel or over on my Facebook, wherever you'd like to view it, please do like, comment, share, message, hit the bell, all that kind of fun stuff. Today, we're going to cap off this little mini career branding series, which started on Friday. Friday, we started with resume renovation, all the secrets to really make your resume be that standout in the job search. Then we capped off the mini series yesterday with really how to build your career brand with your LinkedIn profile. How you take that, in my view, single sheet of resume that is so dazzling. Get them in here, get them on the phone. I have to speak with them. How you take that resume, take it to LinkedIn, and you expand it into a three-dimensional sales brochure. That was yesterday. Today, we are going to end this mini series with a live Q&A. So please do send in your questions, and thanks to those that already sent them in. By the way, questions, just send them in to ask@selfrecruiter.com. That's ask@selfrecruiter.com. All the best ones are always included. So let's jump right into today. This is the Ask SelfRecruiter live Q&A. All on job search, all on career. This is where you should come to get your answers for everything that may be troubling you in your career. All those challenges that feel like they're holding you back, there is a way around those. In case you haven't seen me before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker, resume and LinkedIn guru as well. So if, like most individuals, you are suffering from poor storytelling across your career, you know, we've all been so close to that journey. We're so emotionally damaged sometimes by that journey, we can't even see how to retell that story in a much more advantageous way. That's really what I do for my clients. So check out my SelfRecruiter website. All the services are over under the service tab if you need some help. And let's get on to today's questions. So here are 12 questions, all on career branding. This is how to make yourself visible and to make sure the value that you bring is visible. Let's jump right in. First question, what is career branding? All right. Maybe a new phrase to folks, but you know, think in terms of even walking down that supermarket aisle and looking at all those products up on the shelf, the Folgers, the Kellogg's, the Coca-Cola. Not bad company from a brand level to be, you know, side by side with. Would you like to be a brand similar to those? Or would you like to be the store brand? That's the difference career branding can make. You want to be seen as the alternative? Maybe the packaging is not quite right. The taste isn't quite right. Oh, the price is very good. Price is very good. Anybody want to compete for a lower price? Not in career. So career branding is a way to control your story. It's truthful, but not confessional. And that means I can leave out any part of the story that I'd like to leave out. Let's say 50% of my work was dull administrative stuff I'd never like to do again. My gosh, don't talk about that. Talk about the 50% of your career that you'd love to do. What's coming to mind is an individual I worked with that all worked for very, very pricey, expensive law firms. I think you can see the example right in my resume renovation lecture. And they worked within events within those law firms, doing spectacular events because they were very well funded. Really nice law firms. But the way they told their story, all people could see is, oh, massive law firm, you're a massive law firm person, more massive law firm for you. Like, I'm a dazzling events person. I'm great anywhere that has events. It doesn't have to be a law firm. But they told the story in such a law firm, people droned out. Career branding is removing the layers of unnecessary story so that clarity can come forward. Having the courage and confidence to tell your story without needing to get every single credit point available, which really undermines our confidence in you. So a little bit of a sneak peek of answer behind what's career branding, but of course, all the answers today are going to cover this. So let's jump right ahead. What's the biggest challenge to fixing my career branding? Well, from my perspective, that's quite easy. The biggest challenge is you. You are your own, we all are our own biggest obstacle. So in terms of fixing our career branding, the problem develops from that emotional attachment to the journey that I just mentioned. We get so bruised up, dinged up, and battered up along the way, really beat down in our story. Another client comes to mind. This is a person running a major business unit in a very, very large, well-known company. And when I look at their background, what a stellar career, from launching pad to running this huge business unit. And they do have a wonderful background. But in reinventing them, in going through the whole story, what they realized themselves was, even at their level where they seemed to be the kingmaker, essentially, in their role, they had been so beaten down over the years, they forgot how wonderful they really were, even though that was their day-to-day role. And it energized them. It changed their vigor. It changed their engagement. So the biggest thing to fixing our career branding is figuring out how to get ourselves out of the way. Don't pre-decide things. Don't pre-decide how your story is going to be. Do what I do with my own clients when I'm reinventing their branding. Sit down and do a deep dive interview like I lay out in detail in the resume renovation lecture, and uncover all of those missing pieces, or pieces that you even intentionally hid away. Oh, hide that over behind the rock. I don't want somebody to see that. That might be one of the biggest sell pieces to guarantee you get next interviews. You just have such emotional baggage wrapped around it. You don't know how to use all these different things. So ourselves are the biggest challenge in fixing the career branding. Second part of the biggest challenge is really the willingness, openness. I mean, it's your story. What are you hiding? It's your story. Open ourselves up and let's go rediscover the real story and find out where the joy in the story is. We drop the sorrow in the story, because everybody's career has the sorrow elements. I hated that part. Everybody's career has that. We drop that. We put on the rose-colored glasses, and every single thing we say is absolutely letter true, but we only say the gravy, the good stuff, the wonderful stuff. That's the first step in fixing your career branding, and the biggest challenge, which you see is right in the mirror. By the way, if you need help, if you can't get around that, because a lot of folks cannot, work with someone that's very sharp that can reposition your whole story. That is my specialty from years of being a recruiter and then years of being a career coach, is really digesting someone's emotional journey and being able to retell it in a very new, more valuable way. So services over on my SelfRecruiter website under the services tab. Next question. My career has several directional turns. That's a very nice way to say it, isn't it? How do I fix my story? Well, I think what this person's trying to say is they began their journey without a clear destination in sight. And I know most people begin their career that way. And a lot of it has to do with the way our whole system works. Is like, you have to choose what you want now. Years before I'm going to do it, how do I know what I want to do? So there's not a lot of exploration built into our system, and that gets us kind of like running down a road. We go, oh, I don't like this road. And we back up and we go a new road, and we go, oh, I'm not sure that's the right road for me either. And go a new road. And we may end up with these several directional turns mentioned here. So you may see that as only a negative, and maybe in interview, people have used that. Oh, you've made a few moves. Just with that tone and that look. Yes, explain yourself. I didn't even have to say the rest of it. This can be turned into an asset if you think about it, because if you look around over the course of our career, the majority of people that aren't very good at their function, no matter whether they're with a wonderful organization or not, the ones that aren't very good at their function are those people that tend to have stayed in that same job with the same employer for a very long time. Now, I love loyalty, and I love to have employees that work for me for a long time. But if you stay in the same job for a very, very long time, you've learned to do that job one way. My gosh, I hope you got with the right company that really did it the right way and you learned just the right way. But what are the odds of that being the case versus the odds of you got into an organization doing it the wrong way, and now you've learned one way of how to do it the wrong way, not the optimal way? So you can take your background of several directions that was a little all over the map and go, I was on a journey. We can look backward in our story. And this is, one client comes to mind that I did this for, and, they still in discussion go, oh, but I didn't have all those ideas in my head. I'm like, you really did, on a subliminal level. And I'm thinking of a client right now that's in visual design, graphic design, creative direction. And this individual has, when I look at their career, they've made one absolutely stunning move to the next absolutely stunning move to the next absolutely stunning move. It's like, oh, how did they do all this? And in different directions, by the way. One into promotions for national magazine, one into national advertising agency, very, very different. Others into educational institutions, into iconic New York institutions, and finally into a direction of philanthropy, and even a little sidetrack into social welfare technology. Ooh, that's all over the map, several directions. And yet, in hindsight, when this person goes into interview, they meticulously built their background, which they did. They meticulously built their background to go and get, I need this experience for what I see myself at someday. I'm going to need that experience. I'm going to need that expertise someday. And they've meticulously built all those pieces to where they can tell their story now. And they go, really, there's not another true competitor to this one. If the chemistry and confidence in this person is right, they're the right one. So fixing your several directional story is going back and telling the very best story of contribution at every single turn, then sewing it together with a little needle and thread in that cover letter, in that conversation, as something methodical you went after to build the expertise that others really can't bring to the table. That fixes the directional problem. Next question, what do we have here? How do I change my career to a new field or industry? Actually, this is quite easy. People get a little bit pigeonholed. As I said, we go down one track and we get stuck, a rut, as you hear me say in a lot of the lectures. Well, how do I go to a new industry? Very easily. Now, over the course of my career, I've reinvented myself 2 or 3 times into completely different directions. Like, I'm going to go do this completely different thing. And you go, well, how is that possible? Well, I'm a very sharp guy. You're a pretty sharp individual. You just have to take what you've built, figure out how it's advantageous to that new field or how it's advantageous to that new industry, reshape your story on LinkedIn, and of course, reshape that story on your resume as well. And if you can't do it yourselves, you know where to go. And then change the narrative in outreach, and understand also, as you're approaching these new fields, your biggest concern and the biggest thing maybe someone in HR might ding you with is, you haven't worked in our industry. Yeah, you haven't worked in this field. Absolutely not. I'm going to use an agree but disagree technique, which means simply I find some way, shape, or form to agree with them, even though I don't want to. And then I'm going to disagree with them by what I say next. And they go, well, John, you never worked in this field. You're in this industry. I haven't. Just as if it's a gift from up above. I don't have that background. I haven't worked in this field. I can't pretend I've worked in this field. That's not going to go well. The best way to overcome it is just to confront it. I haven't. There it is on the table. But I'm sure, and then I begin to let the air out of that argument, but I'm sure you'll meet a lot of those individuals in the other candidates. Other people are always candidates with a da-da-da-da. I'm always an individual that you'll meet, those other candidates you'll meet. What I bring to the table, then you have to differentiate yourself. What I bring to this table is something very, very different, along with the right skills that will make me the most exceptional person as I step into this role. I just projected myself verbally right into the role so they can imagine. And now I make the case about why I'm the best thing since sliced bread, and will bring new perspective, new solutions, and a passion that those people at the competitor roles just can't bring. Also, secret here in changing industries is don't send it to the wrong people. As you'll hear me say often in my LinkedIn lecture, and often in my resume lecture, and of course in my Supercharging Your Job Search lecture, all on how to organize and manage it, is you've got to be reaching out to the right person. If you'd like to work in HR, HR is absolutely the right person. I sure hope you're reaching out to the boss or boss's boss and not your competitor. Oh my gosh, they're going to take my next promotion. Let's hide that in the vertical file. Reach out to the decision maker directly, which I teach in my other lectures. All the verbiage is right there, all the way to do it. Dear Jack, dear Jim, dear Jill, and introduce yourself. Remembering not only is it selling, it's a sales event, whether we like it or not, it's also a dating event. And I have to master both of those, meaning it's always all about them and your excitement about them before it's ever about you. Next question, how can career branding help me land the next level role? When we do very well at whatever role it might be, there's a natural inclination of those that manage us to step away from us. Let's give them some distance. Let's step back a little bit. Let's water the plant, put a little plant food in there. Don't disturb them. Keep them productive. Just keep them going. Don't look here when we're doing a great job and we're not clamoring for that next level. How you get seen right for the next level is, what are you waiting for? Let's tell you a little story from my career background. Before I was ever a career coach and before I was ever a recruiter, 7, 8 years in outside recruitment, including ending up being VP over all 100 offices. Before all of that, my gosh, I worked in a pre-press environment, running a pre-press department manager. Number one department, by the way, out of 121 departments. Yes. Piece of pride, absolutely. I'm very driven to excellence. Excellence is always what I've pursued. Grew up in small business. Thanks, Mom and Dad. But my general manager suddenly went to be country manager of Canada. And out of 121 locations, we're the number 4 store in the country. Oh, a big monster of a store. And so John, having the number 1 department in the country, said, looks like I should just rise to the throne here and go after this general manager role, which pays even more. And let's go after that. And you have to think about your career branding. You have to think about your competitors. You have to think about how you differentiate yourself. Now, back in those days, before all of my background I have today, I made a huge mistake. I failed to really consider my competitor thoroughly, because I could literally see the competitors at the smaller locations applying for the same job, going after the same job I'm after. And you know what? I brought a lot more background to the table before I ever joined the company than they brought. So I'm like the 800-pound gorilla in the space. I'm like, I can go in and take this job from those people really easily. That's a very difficult situation. That's an ego and arrogance situation. You become so full of yourself, your abilities, your belief in them, that you fail to see the competitor. Well, you can change a lot of these concerns and everything else with a little bit clearer eyes and always keeping an eye on the competitor. But the rest of it is really done with how you change your story. So go back and fix your story on your LinkedIn profile that shows you not just as a great producer in this little role, but a great producer that's always looking for the next level, the next item, the next introduction, the next thing I can improve. So that becomes part of your story. The other part of career branding, besides improving the story elements in text format, is to change the visual. LinkedIn really allows us to do this, and that's where the bulk of your career branding will happen. We can go back through our work life, just as I advise my clients. If I'm working on their career branding, I said, why don't you go back and collect together every single picture that ever touched your work life? That's the good picture, the bad picture, the in focus, the out of focus. That's my dirty desk. What would John do with that? I don't know. But I've used the dirty desk photo before, cropped a certain way, understanding the story, a little bit of type over top to bring it alive. And in a slideshow, suddenly your career and contribution comes to life, being seen for the next role. So even though you may not like to post all of that stuff, and I don't know which ones to post, if you're not creative and can't see the through line of the story, then work with someone creative that can do it for you. Your career branding can change and open doors that you never really dreamed existed, but you have to imagine it's possible first. And you have to understand that in this case, because these are not matters of the heart, no does not mean no. No means didn't quite get me. Try it again if you got enough backbone. That's what it means here. Next question. My consulting business failed during the pandemic. How do I fix that story and get hired? Well, whether it's your consulting business or your restaurant business or whatever other or retail storefront business, there's a lot of businesses that failed during the pandemic. So I see a silver lining. Let me have a little sip here. It's always about looking at the story from a new perspective, a new direction. And so what's the background of this consulting business? How long did you have it? You had it 10 or 20 years? You know what that is? It's success, baby. It does not matter what happened at the very end. Everything in the world turned sideways. And without that government injection of all those funds, it would have been much, much worse than it was. your business failing during the pandemic after 10 or 20 years of success is a success. You just have to figure out how to convey the story that also shows that you are not damaged goods. There's nothing damaged here. I am ready to go for an employer when I can step on board. And that means largely the same thing we've been talking about today. You're going to have to go back all the way through the background, and you're going to have to go, well, I lived that journey. It was dazzling. Does it look journey? Does it look dazzling when I look? Looks a little drab or looks a little ordinary. Where's the pizzazz of the story that I have to add back to it? So you're going to have to go back and rethink the story elements, check the resume renovation, check the building your career brand with LinkedIn lecture. Those will help you a lot. There's another lecture called Career Evolution. That's part 2 to my LinkedIn lecture. And that lecture really, once you have a LinkedIn profile that positions you nicely, how do you use it as a marketing tool? And this marketing tool proper use of social media, once you have developed the right profile, is how you're going to fix all of this and show them that you still have a lot of passion for your field. Oh my gosh, and you're available. Look at that. Look at that. If you need someone to work with, of course, you know who to work with there. Next question, can my career branding help me get remote gigs? Absolutely. First off, if we're talking about gigs, I imagine we're talking about contract work, hourly work, or segment work, whatever it might be, however it's divided up for your field. Ability to do it remotely. Now, a few professions have done it remotely for a long time, and boy, didn't they enjoy some special perks. Now, in the last 2-3 years, because of other events, a great number of us have had a chance to sample a little more remote activity. Here's some remote activity today. So yes, I get the attraction of remote gigs. How do you align yourself or be seen as that person that can be this person? You've got to go back and tell the story of remote contribution, not simply offsite remote, but talk about how you were able to overcome obstacles or engage people or come up with the right solution, working, cross-platform, cross-channel, whatever it might be, cross-functionally, on your team. You have to go back and tell a better story, and then use your about section and your headline, the about section and your headline, to essentially make sure people understand the value you can bring on a remote basis that can really help shore up challenges they're having with their own budgets and PR while they're trying to solve whatever their critical issues are for your industry, which of course you know better than I. But yes, many things we can do here, and they have to see us as having done it effectively for other brands. So let's trot out those case studies. Let's talk about our contribution, and let's drop the baggage and knock the story out of the park. That will fix your career branding and get your remote gigs. How do I use one resume for all jobs I desire? That's a great question, because even myself, 10, 15, 20 years ago, even myself, I was more of the belief that, I need a variety of resumes, all endlessly morphing to be a bullseye for the target. And there's a lot of truth to that. But actually, over time, what I've realized is you don't need more than one resume. You need the right resume. The right resume goes to every single role that you have in the background, considers the larger umbrella of the story, and then has just the exact amount of detail to cause dazzle, cause the excitement. Ooh, get them in here, get them on the phone. I have to speak with them. Just that right amount of content to tip over that edge. Then what you do if you're going after several different roles, that background could all be valuable too. It could be valuable over here, could be valuable here, could be valuable over here. Now I simply take the top 2-3 lines of the resume. All of this is detailed in my resume renovation lecture. You can go take a look. I take the top 2 or 3 lines of the resume, which I call the positioning title, not a statement, because there's not a single sentence on any resume I create. We're in a world where no one will read. Why would we have a sentence on a resume? Not even logical any longer. You have to distill down to concept communication. So check out resume renovations. Then you simply swap that positioning title. So every single time it's a dead bullseye out of the stack of 1,000 to 2,000 resumes, and they're droning out like snow blindness, resume blindness. They pick yours up. They go, oh, get them in here, get them in here, get them on the phone. I have to speak with them And that's how you go after all the different jobs. No matter who's holding which version of the resume, then on your LinkedIn side, which they didn't ask, but let's close the circle on the question, you use the about or summary section to position all 2 or 3 areas. And the person holding whatever resume they're holding sees what they need to see, and they see the others as value added areas that the other competitors don't bring. That's how you have the right focus without committing all to one singular direction. Keep your doors open. Next question. My LinkedIn story seems all over the map. How do I simplify me? Of course, a little bit repetitive here, and everybody thinks their challenge is different. But I have a great one I can talk about even right now. I have a client that is, over the years, they've worked with so many luxury brands. And some of this is representing the luxury brands directly. Some of this is being on staff on the luxury brands. Some of it's being remote in their own business representing luxury brands. And so in a sense, when you begin to collect all the brands together, it's like, oh my gosh, it's a laundry list that never ends. All over the map, and literally all over the map in this case, because it's all over the world, which is wonderful. That's an asset. How you simplify is, it's like that kid in the candy store. You know, there's an interesting candy store here on the Lower East Side of New York called Economy Candy. I think they just had their 80th birthday or something like that. It's a whole store just full of candy, every kind of candy imaginable. I resisted ever going in because I imagine I'd buy too much if I went in there. But you can imagine how a child would be in there. Here's $5. Go ahead, whatever you'd like. It's like, how do I decide where? That's how you feel about your own story. You're so enthralled with every little piece of your own story. That's also why it's all over the map. You don't know how to distill down or how to edit down. Not so different also from a gentleman I worked with that engaged me after a lecture at the New York State Department of Labor. It was a LinkedIn lecture, and resume comes up, and I happened to mention, resume, single sheet of paper in all cases. By the way, just my opinion. And he's like, come on. What if you've been a CEO in a 30-year career? It's never going to fit. Okay, take a breath. I don't think that reaction is because you don't like John's answer. I think that reaction is because you find yourself sitting at the Department of Labor going, well, how come no one can see my value? How come I'm sitting here? And obviously not a surprise. This guy hires me. He sends me his stuff. It is 6 pages of my eyes bleeding. Very impressive background, by the way. CEO and COO before that, and CFO before that, and 30 years of endless career he could not stop talking about. How do you simplify that? You take away 95% of the story. On a background like that, you realize if you just took all the story away and only put the titles and the employers down, it's so dazzling. Without the detail, your hair stands up on the back of your neck. So as you get further and further up the food chain, there may be less and less detail, but every bit of it has to still be dazzling. So they go, oh, you must be the one. Yes, I am. So let's talk about how I can help your company. You may not be able to simplify yourself if you can't center on your own story. So you may have to work with someone if you can't solve it. But really, it comes down to being able to see the entire picture, identifying only what's most valuable, maybe with a highlighter, only most valuable, and then stick to it. Only the highlighted items come on the resume. Everything else has to be deeply negotiated, which I teach in the resume renovation lecture. You can check that one out. Next question. I don't like my pictures. Well, join the club. How do I select what to include on my LinkedIn profile? I'm not like a lot of my pictures. Sure, I'll confess that. But I don't like a lot of my pictures also. I don't particularly like what I'm seeing here in the camera today because I go, oh, where's my hair? Why does my nose look so big? We tend to gravitate toward the things we don't like about ourselves. And we see those things. We go, oh, I don't want someone to see me like that. I'm like, this is who we are. This is what it is. We just need to own that part of it and get over it. It's hard for me to come to that conclusion because, of course, when I was a kid, the thought of losing my hair would have sent me just absolutely over the edge. Like anything in life, but don't let me lose my hair. Until you realize that part really doesn't matter. It's about in here, which only comes later in life. So how we get down to this part of it is you've got to look at every single picture of you as a different candidate for that role. They're all competing for that role. Every picture of you is competing to get that role, but they're a different person. Which one would you give it to? Which one would you give the responsibility to? Which one would you trust? Which one would you partner with? You know, if you approach selection of your pictures that way, you will pick a different picture. You will not care about your hair or your nose or those kind of things. Oh, I have wrinkles under my eyes. I'm like, well, I'm a little more mature than a child. Yes, I have wrinkles. Maturity. You know, so really it's about energy, enthusiasm, drive, passion, presence. That's what we look for in pictures, especially the headshot, of course. But those things are all intangible. Can't really tell you, sorry, a little tissue here. Can't really tell you when we see it or what it is. I guess we can tell you when we see it, but can't really explain what it is. But we know, oh, there it is, there it is, there it is. So look at your pictures for that. What has the right energy? What has the right passion? Does a picture look like you were waiting 1 extra second for them to snap the shot? That's like, they're about to take the shot. That's not the right picture. It's the picture where somehow you got a little bit of the cat that ate the canary, a little bit of, I'm having the best day ever. A lot of times we don't have a best day ever, but you have to have the best day in those cases because you're managing a brand. If you can't do it yourself, get with a close friend that you trust has a good eye. Not that you trust will present that, oh, thank you for picking the nice pictures of me. You don't want the nice pictures of you. You want the effective pictures of you. The pictures that would be hired tomorrow. And sometimes that's a different image than we have in our own brain, harder for us to accept. So maybe you have to give up control to someone else to help you select those pictures. Balance also. Don't let it become Facebook, but do have enough imagery there as if someone could look over your shoulder gently to see what you're reading, doing, sharing, attending, interacting with, because that's how you influence them. That's how you persuade them about your career. How can I use social media, or how can my social media use, if I could read this clearly, get me seen for a role? Quite easily. I have an example that comes right to mind as I'm giving the talk. This was a few years back, this is probably 6 or 7 years ago. I had a gal that I was working with that was dying to go work for Airbnb. She'd done a little bit in travel, a little bit travel related things. She wanted to continue that trajectory, but in something new, exciting. And she saw Airbnb as a little bit of a rocket ship she wanted to join. She's like, oh, that's it. I want to retool my background story to be a really great fit. And then I want to go after and get that job there as my primary target after I go after other ones as well. How do I do it? And one of the suggestions I had, now this person was not on Twitter originally. I'm a big believer, if you'd like to be hired, you need to be on Twitter. I do not mean that you need to be on Twitter every day. That's not what I mean. Be on Twitter the way I'm on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I have a Twitter account. I never go to it. It's linked to my LinkedIn profile as I teach in the Career Evolution Lecture. Everything I share on LinkedIn seamlessly rolls out to Twitter without any extra work, doubling my advertising about who I am and what I do and what I'm involved in and what I'm passionate about. Suddenly, why don't you just go be passionate about all the right things? You see that job you want? What would that best person be? Reading, doing, sharing, attending? I better make sure I'm doing it. And I better post some things about what their competitors are doing, and maybe even comment in nicely about ways to help them on social media. And then combine all of that activity with a proper, real use of LinkedIn to land this job. And that means, which I teach in my LinkedIn lecture, not a fan of applying online. Instead, I simply use the LinkedIn lecture and follow the formula to open 25 to 30 profiles that somehow surround that job, up the food chain, down, all the way down to admin level, left and right into a couple other surrounding departments. I've probably opened all 25 to 30 people's profiles that I would interact with every single week if I stepped into this role. I can now warm up that audience because they're looking at me. I can ask them to connect with me, which gives them another chance to see me. And then I can be brave enough, without even waiting for the answer to the connect, to reach out to 3, 4, 5 individuals to introduce myself as the most exciting, best individual for their team in the world. Of course, I have to lead with why I'm so excited about them, which has to be all about them. Well, in this case, back to the story I was telling you, this gal who was dying to work for Airbnb, she's like, okay, I hear this whole strategy. I hear what you can do. And obviously we spent a little more time than I just spent with you. And by the next week, when we're talking again, she's joined Twitter, and she's also cleverly hooked the two founders of Airbnb into following her back. Wow. I'm like, impressive. Your first week on Twitter, and you get the founders of the company you'd like to be hired for to follow you back so you can market right into their tweet stream. There's a lot of different things you can do, but you're going to have to set, you can't get there from here off to the side. You can get there from here. You're going to have to think of a new way. And that means you have to take a new look. Maybe some rose-colored glasses will help you as well. What else am I missing in my career branding? Well, we've talked about what to do with the resume. We've talked about the past story, how that all translates between resume and LinkedIn. What you're probably missing in your career branding is embodiment. Now, if you've watched enough of my lectures, you've heard me say I'm actually shy and introverted, which usually makes my friends spit out their drink when they hear it across the room, like, John just said he was shy and introverted. I'm like, I am. Whether I show it to you, whether you've ever seen it, that's a skill I have in not showing it. That doesn't change the reality of what's just underneath. You grew up shy and introverted, you really never get out of it, even though you get beyond it. Obviously, I've mastered technique to get beyond it, whether it be, or a video session like this, or whether it's in-person audiences, which I love. But what you're missing is something I had to go through getting to this point, and that is becoming comfortable center stage. When you're presenting yourself, you're not like waiting, they're going to love me. They're just going to pick me. They're just going to pick me. They're not going to pick you. You're definitely the one they're never going to pick. That's not how it works. We just don't pick people. The people we pick are, wow, what an amazing discussion, Jack, Jim, or Jill. I'm so excited by the value I bring to this role. What's our next step? That's the person they pick. It is your job to convince them, to teach them how to select you. Tune in for my interview intervention lecture. That's a great lecture as well. So the biggest thing here is arriving at that point where you give yourself permission to be something you feel you're not. Now, at first, I felt, dare I say a word like fraudulent? I felt fraudulent because I had to be outgoing. I just had to be myself. I had to give myself permission to not care. Well, I care deeply, but not care for the wrong reasons about what other people think, and just share my pearls of wisdom in the best way I can to help other people. And suddenly when you arrive at that point to give yourself that level of permission, you begin to embody your career branding. You rewrite that story in a new way on the resume. You rewrite that story in a new way on the LinkedIn profile. You allow yourself to be comfortable with that language. You change the way your cover letter now works and pitches you and sews it together. And you're also going to have to change verbally how you present and talk about yourself. Biggest thing that we have to make sure we never do again is continually throw ourselves under the front tire of the bus. We suffer in our society from something called modesty and humility, which is probably hard to find these days, it seems like, with a lot of the social media that's out there. But really, as a society, we still battle this. And, modesty and humility are wonderful, wonderful traits for all portions of your life, but not job search and not career. So even though you feel like, oh, I can't possibly brag about myself like this. I can't just act like I know what I'm doing. Do you know what you're doing? Well, I'm an expert in my field. Then you've got to give yourself permission to own your expertise and just relax with confidence into your story. Practice, practice, practice makes perfect. That's another piece missing from career branding, is getting yourself comfortable with the new you, engaging other people, opening doors in conversation to see where they're going to go, rather than just, do you hire me for this? Do I get to talk to you about that? There must be so many other things you could also talk about, because this is an industry professional. This is about opening up our brains so that when we're ready for that networking conversation, a lot of amazing things can happen. Well, this has been, here it comes, 12 questions, all on career branding from Ask SelfRecruiter. If you need help in your job search, check out my SelfRecruiter website. A lot of great content there that will help you. Halfway down the homepage, very special version of my LinkedIn lecture where you can see me live, and at the same time see the slides large or me large, whatever is really better for you. You can use it as a start and stop tutorial that will really make your LinkedIn profile even better. Some other articles over my LinkedIn that you can get to. If you need help, just check the services tab over on the SelfRecruiter website, remembering that small changes change perception. You don't have to move the entire mountain at once to move that needle. It's small little incremental alignments of those dominoes to get them all to fall your direction. It's part of how you take control of the discussion of you, and that is the core of what career branding is all about. Take your first step, take your next step, and the one after that, the one after that, and the one after that. And let's keep moving forward. Don't let somebody else think for yourself. Get behind the wheel, and let's get to our destination. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is the 21st episode of Ask SelfRecruiter. Check out the other episodes. Please do like, comment, share, pass them around to all your friends. And whether you're joining me over on Facebook, LinkedIn Live, or on my SelfRecruiter YouTube channel, thanks for joining in, and we'll see you very soon. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.